You weren't meant to forget, but they made sure you did long before religion was weaponized, before the modern world severed spirit from science. There was a force that shaped the foundation of reality itself. His name was Tehuti, not just a god, not just a scribe, but a living principle, consciousness in motion. They called him Thoth, the architect of divine law, the master of symbols, of language, of time. But his story was never meant to be mythology. It was memory, a spiritual code buried so deep within humanity, most would live and die without ever unlocking it. But you're here, and something inside you knows this isn't just another story. It's a key, one that might awaken something ancient in you, something sacred, because Tahuti is not a character of the past. He is a force that lives now, waiting to be remembered, a potential residing within you. Before the first pyramid was built, before language had names or lines, before even the stars aligned themselves into stories, we were not separate from the laws that governed the universe. We were those laws. But as the world hardened and memory dimmed, humanity began to forget. And in that forgetting, something ancient slipped through the cracks, not vanished, but veiled. Tahuti, the one the ancients called the divine scribe, was never a figure of worship. He was the principle of intelligence itself, not mere intellect. The mind can be clever and still lost. Thoth represented the ordering intelligence of the cosmos, the ability to bridge the unseen with the seen. He was the cosmic translator, the interface between pure energy and structured form, spirit into symbol, vibration into sound, law into language, not just writing on scrolls, but etching the framework of reality itself into being. He was the living embodiment of cosmic order, a blueprint of potential waiting to be activated within you. In Kemet, what the West now calls ancient Egypt, Tahuti wasn't mythologized as a distant god in the clouds. He was present, a force of balance and truth, invoked when divine order, Ma'at, needed to be restored. Whenever a soul passed into the afterlife, it was Tahuti who recorded the weighing of the heart. He didn't judge, he measured, he observed, noted, and harmonized. He was neutral, like nature itself, but not passive. Without Tahuti, chaos would rule. And so the ancients placed him at the origin of all knowledge, all calculation, all law. But we've diluted what that means. In a world obsessed with data and words, we've forgotten what wisdom truly is. Tahuti didn't just speak the truth, he was the truth encoded into form, the vibrational key to unlock a higher state of being. The Emerald Tablets, often dismissed by mainstream scholars as symbolic nonsense or fringe esoterica, are said to be fragments of Thoth's teachings. But those who've really read them, not with the eye but with the soul, know that these texts aren't stories, they're systems, not metaphors, but mechanisms, formulas for unlocking hidden aspects of reality. Just as a scientist follows laws of physics, the initiate follows laws of consciousness, and those laws were first whispered through Thoth. These tablets aren't historical relics, they're blueprints for becoming, a roadmap to self-mastery that transcends the limitations of linear time. In Hermeticism, the teaching said to descend from Tahuti himself, reality is mental, the all is mind. This isn't just philosophy, it's quantum mechanics before we had the language to call it that. Tahuti was the original quantum physicist, the master of vibration, polarity, cause and effect. He taught that all things emerge from one source, and that source is the mind, consciousness, frequency, thought. The world is not a thing, it's a thought held in the divine intelligence, and Tahuti is the pattern by which thought becomes form. He is how the infinite expresses itself into the finite. When you speak with intention, when you write with clarity, when you align your thoughts with truth, you are embodying Thoth. His story isn't a legend to admire, it's a template to embody. And that's what they don't want you to know. They want Thoth to stay locked in temples and tombs, reduced to hieroglyphs no one can read, turned into dusty symbols of a forgotten age. But the wise know better, the wise remember, and they activate the potential within. There are some truths we can't speak openly here because platforms like this aren't made for that kind of knowing, but inside Insights Academy, our free community, we share the deeper layers, the ones that change everything, the practical tools for applying these ancient principles in your modern life. Join us and receive the Kabbalion ebook free for a limited time only. Tahuti didn't leave, we just stopped listening. But when the silence gets loud enough, when the lies no longer satisfy, That's when his voice returns, and when it does, it doesn't come from the sky. It comes from within, resonating with your soul's innate wisdom. They say the universe began with a sound, not a bang, a tone, a vibration so precise, so divine, it echoed out into infinite space and wrote the laws of nature into existence. That sound wasn't random, it was will made audible, and Thoth was that will's voice. He didn't just speak words, he created through them. Every symbol, every glyph, every utterance carried power, not because it meant something, but because it was something, a vibrational key that unlocked a specific aspect of reality. In Kemet, the ancient scribes weren't just record keepers, they were magicians, conduits of divine will. To write a word was to summon the force it represented. Language wasn't just communication, it was creation, a tool to shape the fabric of existence. This idea is echoed across time and culture. In the Bible, in the beginning was the Word. In the Vedas, the primordial sound Om. In quantum theory, the observation that vibration is the foundation of matter. What we call reality is nothing more than organized energy. And the one who knows how to speak to energy can reshape the very fabric of the world. Tehuti taught this, but over time, humanity lost the ability to listen, seduced by the noise of the external world. Language became transactional, literal, empty, devoid of its inherent power. But it wasn't always this way. The glyphs carved into temple walls weren't letters, they were living symbols, each one a layered key that unlocked aspects of the mind, the soul, the cosmos. Tahuti didn't just create a writing system, he encoded a multidimensional map of consciousness into every mark. A falcon didn't just mean sky, it represented vision, ascension, divine perspective. A spiral wasn't just a pattern, it was a lesson in time, flow, and cycles, and when these symbols were spoken aloud with intention, they triggered resonance, the vibration of truth. In this system, your voice is sacred, your word is your wand. The things you say aren't just sounds, they are spells, vibrational imprints that shape your reality. To say, I am, is to invoke creation itself, to declare your presence in the cosmic dance. And this is where the modern world has quietly programmed us to misuse our own power. We speak negativity, limitation, fear, and we reinforce those patterns in our reality. We echo slogans, repeat headlines, mimic trends, never realizing that our words are tuning forks, and every phrase we speak sends out a frequency that shapes how the world responds to us. Tehuti knew this. He warned of it because misuse of the word is misuse of creation, and misuse always leads to distortion. This is why so many initiatory traditions begin with silence, not because silence is empty, but because it is sacred. In silence, the chaos of unformed thought settles, the noise of programming dissolves, and what emerges is clarity, the space where true words can rise, empowered by the divine mind. Thoth's wisdom was never about speaking more, it was about speaking right, aligning speech with intention, aligning intention with truth. When those three converge, creation happens, and not just outwardly, internally too. The stories we tell ourselves become the reality we live in. I'm not good enough. It's too late. I'm stuck. These aren't observations, they're affirmations, and the more we repeat them, the deeper they carve into our consciousness. But what if you reverse the current? What if you spoke like Thoth? Intentionally, truthfully, with the vibration of clarity, you'd begin to see it, not all at once, but subtly. The world responding differently, your thoughts aligning with deeper awareness, patterns shifting, doors opening that logic can't explain. This isn't mysticism, it's ancient science. Frequency precedes form, and those who master frequency master form. Tahuti didn't just teach this, he was this. Every time you speak with purpose, every time you use language to lift instead of limit, you tune yourself to the original force of creation. You become a scribe of your own destiny, a co-creator, not a consumer, and suddenly, words stop being noise. They become sacred again, tools for shaping your world and expressing your divine potential. To walk with Tahuti is to reclaim the voice of creation, not to speak louder, but to speak truer, not to repeat, but to reveal. And in that revelation, you'll find something you've always known but forgot. Your voice was never just yours. It was the echo of something much older, something divine, the resonance of the cosmos itself. We were never meant to chase time, that was taught, a system imposed in the world. Thoth revealed time wasn't something to manage or master, it was something to align with, not a clock, but a current, not linear, but circular, flowing like water, pulsing like breath. Thoth governed time, not through domination, but through rhythm, through the moon, through cycles, through divine timing, and somewhere deep in our bones, we still remember that rhythm. But the modern world pulls us off beat. It teaches us to live by artificial time, calendar grids, alarm clocks, deadlines that push us faster than our soul's pace. In that rush, we lose access to the flow, we forget the rhythm, and when we forget the rhythm, we forget who we are. We become slaves to the clock, disconnected from the natural cycles of life. Tehuti was the guardian of lunar energy, the keeper of night cycles, of hidden movement, of inner tides. While the sun dominates through light and visibility, the moon rules the subconscious, the inner world, the unspoken truths. Tahuti didn't just track the moon, he worked through it. His power was in its subtlety, the way it pulled the ocean, the way it shifted the tides of the womb, the way it reminded the initiated that time was never meant to be a prison but a portal, a gateway to deeper understanding. The moon teaches that every phase has purpose, every cycle, even the dark ones, serve the spiral of becoming. But modern systems stripped us of this. They flattened time into a straight line, birth, work, death. They sold productivity as success and painted stillness as laziness. But Thoth knew stillness is sacred, rest is a phase of power, silence is part of the cycle. True wisdom emerges in the quiet moments when we allow ourselves to simply be. In ancient temples aligned with lunar phases, initiates studied the motion of stars, not just to map the sky, but to map the self, because cosmic rhythm is not external, it's internal. Your body, your emotions, your intuition, they are mirrors of the moon. And when Thoth taught time, he didn't teach schedules, he taught sequencing, sacred unfolding. He taught that just like the moon, your journey waxes and wanes. Sometimes you're in expansion, sometimes contraction, sometimes the path is bright, sometimes it disappears entirely. That doesn't mean you're lost, it means you're in sync. But look at what we've become, tethered to screens, obsessing over timelines, chasing artificial milestones while ignoring the natural flow of our becoming. Our technology advances, but our spirit lags behind, exhausted and disconnected, yearning for the rhythm it once knew. Thoth's wisdom reminds us that without rhythm, knowledge becomes noise. Without timing, even truth falls flat. There's a reason why certain insights arrive only when you're still, why healing often happens in the dark, why clarity comes after you surrender. It's not a weakness, it's rhythm, divine rhythm. The Gregorian calendar was not designed with your soul in mind. It was engineered for control, for uniformity, for economy. But the moon does not care about your to-do list. It moves at the pace of mystery, of unfolding, of inner knowing, and if you watch it, really watch it, you'll start to feel yourself coming back into tune, back into harmony with a deeper order, back into the current. Allow yourself to be guided by the lunar cycles, and you will rediscover the natural rhythm of your being. Thoth never left, only waited for you to remember. When you begin to live by rhythm, not by reaction, life softens, the fear of falling behind dissolves. You stop asking, am I late? And start asking, what season am I in? You stop pushing, you start flowing, and in that flow, synchronicities increase. Alignment appears, and the timing that once felt like luck begins to look like law, because it is the law, universal law, the same law Thoth whispered to the ancients, now whispering to you in the quiet moments, in the pulse of the moon, in the pauses you've been taught to ignore. The path back to divine timing is not paved, it's patterned, and you don't force your way onto it, you attune to it, you feel it in your body, in your breath, in your knowing. And when you do, you stop living on the clock and start living in the current, the one Tahuti encoded long before the first hour was ever counted. You begin to dance to the rhythm of the cosmos. We tend to think of gods as external, something out there above us, beyond us, but Tahuti was never a being you were meant to worship. He was a frequency you were meant to remember, not a statue, not a story, but a field of intelligence so pure, so ancient, that when you encounter it, something in you stirs, a recognition, a return. Because Tahuti was not just the god of wisdom, he was wisdom, not as information, but as living consciousness, the awareness that flows through everything, behind everything, connecting everything. And that same intelligence is not outside of you, it is you, or at least the part of you that has been buried beneath layers of conditioning, programming, and doubt. Tehuti represents the divine mind, not the egoic intellect we celebrate today, but the eternal intelligence that exists beyond thoughts, the inner observer, the silent witness, the presence behind the personality. And the irony? It's always been there, always watching, always guiding, patiently waiting for you to awaken to its presence. You felt it in the moments of stillness, in the sudden clarity you couldn't explain, in the knowing that didn't come from books or voices. That was Thoth, not as an entity, but as consciousness made conscious, the divine spark within you. This is what the ancients understood and what the modern world fears, that divinity is not reserved for the heavens, it's embedded within us. That's why Tehuti wasn't just a scribe, he was the interface, the one who showed humanity how to bridge the seen and unseen, spirit and form, higher mind and physical reality. He didn't just record divine law, he translated it. And the more we access that same level of consciousness, the more we stop seeking truth out there and start becoming it. You stop looking for answers and start listening for resonance. Truth begins to feel different, heavier, simpler, more alive, a palpable vibration that resonates with your soul. But consciousness isn't just awareness, it's a creative force. It's the ability to observe a thing and, through that observation, shape it. This is where modern physics and ancient wisdom finally meet. Tahuti taught this long before quantum mechanics had the language, the observer effect, the non-locality of awareness, the illusion of separateness. All of it was encoded in his teachings long before microscopes and math could verify it. And still we resist, because to accept that consciousness shapes reality means we have to take full responsibility for the reality we're living. That's the part most people aren't ready for. But if you are, if you're still here listening, questioning, remembering, then you already feel it. You already know that something within you is waking up, something quiet, powerful, sacred. You've glimpsed it in synchronicities, in dreams, in the way your body responds to certain truths without needing proof. That's not imagination, that's alignment. That's what happens when you start to come back into resonance with divine intelligence. You begin to see the patterns, the codes, the messages hidden in plain sight, the universe speaking directly to you. Tehuti doesn't speak through thunder or fire. He speaks through intuition, subtle nudges, moments of clarity, the gentle pull toward what feels real, even if it doesn't make sense. In truth, every great mystic, inventor, seer, and philosopher who ever shook the world did so by tapping into this field of consciousness. They weren't smarter, they were stiller. Tehuti isn't reserved for temples or initiates. He's available to anyone willing to empty themselves of noise, because only when the noise stops can the voice of intelligence rise. And when it does, it doesn't feel like learning. It feels like remembering, as if the truth was always there, just buried beneath layers of distraction. This is why you're drawn to teachings that don't just inform you, but awaken something in you, because you're not just learning, you're activating, rekindling the divine spark within. The teachings of Tehuti were never meant to stay on papyrus. They were meant to be lived, embodied, breathed. And the more you honor that intelligence within, the more you'll realize there's no separation. The God you seek, the wisdom you chase, the guidance you crave, it's already inside you, waiting for you to listen, waiting for you to remember. If you trace the roots of Western mysticism deep enough, past the polished pages of modern philosophy and the watered-down New Age shelves, you'll find a name that has quietly shaped it all: Hermes Trismegistus. But peel back the Latinized mask, and you'll see the truth. Hermes was Tehuti. His name changed with time, his image distorted to fit the mythologies of new empires, but the essence remained. The Greeks called him Hermes, the Romans Mercury. But to the ancient Kemetic priests, he was always Tahuti, the keeper of divine knowledge, the cosmic architect, the mind behind the mystery. And here's the part they don't teach in schools. Hermeticism, often credited as a philosophical curiosity or historical footnote, is actually a coded survival of ancient spiritual science, a testament to the enduring power of Thoth's teachings. It's the whisper of Egypt echoing through the scrolls of Alexandria, through alchemical texts in Europe, through secret societies and hidden schools of thought. What was once living knowledge, practiced and embodied, was slowly turned into metaphor, myth, and eventually mysticism without memory. But Tehuti's teachings were never meant to be abstract. They were precise, mechanical, scientific in the highest sense, because they mapped not just the external world, but the inner landscape of consciousness. The Kabbalion, a modern condensation of Hermetic wisdom, speaks in axioms: as above, so below. The all is mind, Everything is vibration. On the surface, they sound poetic, but beneath them lies an entire operating system for reality. These principles weren't poetic musings, they were laws, immutable just like gravity. And Tehuti didn't just teach them, he encoded them into the very structure of initiation, of language, of cosmology. It's why the emerald tablets speak not in clear instruction, but in layers, because truth, once filtered through language, must be rediscovered through experience. The path to enlightenment is a journey of self-discovery, a process of unveiling the truth that resides within. But somewhere along the line, Hermeticism was filtered through empire, through secrecy, through control. Thoth's wisdom, once offered openly to initiates ready to align with truth, became hidden behind veils of symbolism so thick most never saw past them. The priesthoods became exclusive, knowledge became power, and eventually the sacred became profaned, reduced to esoteric jargon. The alchemist turned into a caricature, the magician into a fraud, and the gods into myths. Still, the core remained untouched. Those who knew where to look found the pattern. They saw that Hermetic principles weren't religious, they were universal, not dogma, but design. They applied not just to spirit, but to the mind, to emotion, to matter, to energy. And slowly, quietly, the teachings made their way into the underground, into the hands of seekers who didn't need temples or titles to understand their power. The truth always finds a way to surface, resonating with those who are ready to receive it. But in today's world, even Hermeticism is being commodified, turned into content, packaged as quick fixes or spiritual aesthetic. Manifestation has become a buzzword, stripped of its sacred context. The law of attraction is taught as if it's about material wealth rather than energetic alignment. This is the distortion Thoth warned of, when wisdom is pursued for power, not presence, when truth is sought for status, not transformation. To truly walk the Hermetic path is not to recite quotes or post symbols, it's to live the laws, to watch your thoughts like a scientist studies the stars, to treat your emotions as alchemical ingredients, to take full responsibility for your vibration, your perception, your reality. This is what Tahuti encoded in the Hermetic tradition, not to be worshipped, but to be activated, not to escape the world, but to master it from within. The goal is not to become a Hermetic scholar, but to embody the principles and become a living expression of divine intelligence. You are not meant to learn Hermeticism, you are meant to remember it, because it's not foreign, it's not even ancient, it's alive in your cells, in your dreams, in the synchronicities that follow you when you start asking the right questions. Tahuti never left, he simply changed form, from temple walls to inner whispers, from scrolls to sensations, from a god you pray to into the intelligence you become. You are the living embodiment of Thoth's legacy. There's a moment every seeker reaches, a threshold that cannot be crossed with intellect or belief or borrowed wisdom. It's the death point, the moment where who you thought you were begins to dissolve and something deeper begins to emerge. This isn't a poetic metaphor. It's the heart of every genuine spiritual path. And Tehuti didn't just teach about this transformation, he designed the architecture of it. The ancient initiates of Kemet didn't seek knowledge for the sake of knowing, they sought it to die to the false self and be reborn as something aligned with divine law. They sought to become living conduits of divine will. What we now call inner alchemy was not just mystical language, it was a precise, systematic process of ego dissolution, energetic refinement, and soul activation. And Tahuti was the gatekeeper of that process. In the Hall of Ma'at, it is Tahuti who records the weighing of the heart. But look deeper. That ceremony wasn't just about death, it was an initiation. Your heart lighter than the feather symbolized a life lived in truth, a consciousness free from distortion. But how do you reach that state? How do you strip away the layers of programming, trauma, performance, and masks until only what is real remains? That's the path of the initiate. It's not glamorous, it's not marketable, it's a quiet, often brutal surrender to the fire of self-honesty, a willingness to burn illusions even when they feel safe, a readiness to sit in the dark and not run, because only in that dark can you hear the voice beneath all others, the one that doesn't speak in fear or lack or comparison, but in stillness. And that voice, it belongs to the divine mind, to Thoth. The journey to enlightenment is not a comfortable one, but it is a necessary one. Inner alchemy begins when you realize that transformation isn't something that happens to you, it's something you choose over and over. You choose to stop blaming. You choose to stop pretending. You choose to confront the parts of yourself that sabotage, project, and hide. And when you do, you begin to change your energetic composition. This is real alchemy, not turning lead into gold, but turning unconscious patterns into conscious power. Tehuti taught that everything operates on frequency, and your ego, your identity, your narratives, they all emit frequency. So if you want to enter a higher state, you must first dissolve the density within you. You must make space, and that space is sacred. By consciously choosing to break the density, the old patterns, we can make way for the light to truly shine. But this isn't about perfection, that's another trap. This is about integration. The initiate doesn't escape shadow, they learn to see through it, to use it as fuel. Tahuti didn't ask his students to become flawless. He asked them to become aware, to walk the path with eyes open, heart engaged, and soul attuned. This is why the true initiatory process wasn't public, it was earned, not through rank or status, but through surrender, through humility, through the slow, patient unwinding of all that is false. By embracing our shadow, integrating it into our awareness, we can become more authentic, well-rounded beings. And yet, in today's spiritual landscape, we celebrate image over essence. We're taught to perform enlightenment rather than embody it. But Thoth sees through performance. He doesn't respond to aesthetics, he responds to alignment. You can't fake the frequency, and when you enter that initiatory fire, the false cannot follow you. It burns away. All that remains is truth. There is a sacred violence to transformation, not in harm, but in the breaking open, the shedding, the unraveling. And this is what so many avoid because the ego is convincing. It tells you you've already arrived. It tells you discomfort is danger. It clings to roles, titles, identities, even pain, because to let them go would mean facing the unknown. But that unknown, that's where Tehuti waits, not to give you something, but to reflect what was always there, hidden beneath the layers, dormant but never dead. Every initiation is a death, every death a return, and the only way out is through, not around, not above. You descend, you confront, you integrate, and as you rise, it's not as someone new, but as someone remembered. You don't become more, you become less distorted, more aligned, more true, and in that truth you find the gold the alchemists were always searching for, not in the world, but within, the key to unlocking your divine potential. The greatest lie ever told was that mythology is fiction, that ancient gods were invented stories distant from reality, detached from relevance. But what if those myths weren't fantasies but mirrors? What if they weren't there to entertain but to remind you of something you've forgotten? Tehuti was never meant to be frozen in history. He wasn't a relic to be admired or a deity to be worshipped from afar. He was a living symbol, an archetype embedded in your consciousness, and that's the part that's been buried under centuries of misdirection. Myths are not dead stories, they are living metaphors that can guide us on our journey. Tahuti was a map, a code, a reflection of the divine mind within you. Every myth carries within it a deeper truth. And Thoth's myth was never just about the moon or magic or scribes. It was about awakening memory, spiritual memory, the kind of memory that doesn't come from books or stories, but from deep resonance, the kind that surfaces when you hear something and your body reacts before your mind does. That sensation of déjà vu when you encounter sacred knowledge, that's not coincidence, that's recognition. That's the part of you beyond time, remembering what the world trained you to forget. Our bodies often know the truth long before our minds catch up. In ancient Kemet, myth wasn't fantasy, it was language, the only language powerful enough to transmit multidimensional truth. A story, when told right, bypasses logic and speaks directly to the subconscious, and Thoth's story has been calling you from the shadows, not to study him, but to see yourself in him, the one who speaks truth, the one who bridges realms, the one who translates the unseen into form. You don't need to believe in gods to feel this, you only need to pay attention to the signs, because Tehuti doesn't just show up in temples, he shows up in your dreams, in the sudden flashes of insight you can't explain, in the way your hands move when you write something that feels channeled, in the symbols that keep following you, the ibis, the moon, the scroll, the feather. He appears in silence, in synchronicities, in those moments where time bends and you feel like something else is guiding you. That's not a coincidence, that's contact. The universe is constantly communicating with us, if we are only willing to listen. You see, when the ancients created myths, they weren't trying to teach history, they were encoding spiritual software. The gods weren't external forces, they were internal archetypes. And the more you activate those archetypes, the more your reality shifts. You stop being a seeker and start becoming a mirror, reflecting the divine intelligence back into the world. The story of Tehuti isn't just something to learn, it's something to live. And when you live it, you stop asking, "Who am I?" and start remembering, "I am." But remembering is painful when you've been trained to forget. The system teaches you to identify with the mask, the role, the external labels: student, employee, follower. These identities feel safe because they're defined, but they're also limiting. And underneath them, your true self is quietly waiting, watching, waiting for the day you stop seeking validation and start following intuition. That's when Thoth begins to move through you, not as a voice, but as a knowing. You'll write differently, speak differently, choose differently because you operate from memory, not mental memory, but soul memory. You tap into a rhythm that precedes thought, a wisdom that doesn't need to explain itself to be real. By aligning with our intuition, we can truly become our authentic selves rather than what society expects us to be. This is the power of myth when it's reclaimed, not a bedtime story, not a scholarly curiosity, but a tool for awakening. Tahuti is the blueprint of the awakened mind, the one who sees without eyes, hears without ears, knows without needing proof. And when you remember that blueprint, you stop idolizing him and start embodying him, not as a figure outside of you, but as a frequency within you. Because the truth is, Tehuti was never lost. You were. And the myths weren't written to entertain, they were written to guide you home. Myths serve as breadcrumbs, guiding us back to our true selves. Once you remember who you are, the journey changes. You're no longer searching outside of yourself for truth, you're decoding the messages that were always within. The books become mirrors, the myths become memories, and the path becomes less about learning and more about aligning, because the real work was never about acquiring information. It was about returning to the source, to the field of awareness from which everything arises. And this is what Thoth quietly offers, not belief, not doctrine, but alignment with divine law, with the order that exists beneath chaos, with the intelligence that breathes through every atom of your being. The true guru resides within, waiting for us to tap into its wisdom. Most seekers get stuck in the in-between. They awaken just enough to know something's wrong, to feel the weight of illusion, but they don't yet know how to navigate life without the script. They try to mix old consciousness with new awareness, and it never fits. That discomfort, that spiritual tension, is the call to return to self, not to escape the world, but to move through it differently. Thoth's teachings weren't about transcendence through denial, they were about mastery through understanding, becoming a channel through which the divine mind could express itself in form. The key is not to escape the world, but to live in it with a higher level of consciousness. You begin to see everything differently. Conversations take on layers, time bends around your focus, opportunities show up not because you're chasing them, but because you're vibrating at the frequency of clarity. You no longer live in reaction, you live in rhythm, and every action, every thought, every word becomes intentional. This is what it means to walk with Tehuti, not in robes and rituals, but in consciousness, in coherence, in the quiet confidence of someone who stopped outsourcing their power. And as you move through the world like this, you start to affect it without trying. Your presence shifts the energy in rooms. Your voice carries weight even in silence. People ask what changed, and you won't always have the words, because some transformations don't translate, they radiate. Enlightenment is not something we can achieve, but rather something that radiates from us. And that's the secret. Tehuti was never here to teach you how to follow. He was here to remind you how to become. The Hermetic path leads you not to a guru or a goal, but to yourself as source, as scribe, as spark of the all. But here's the trap to avoid: thinking the journey is done, thinking awakening is a finish line. It isn't. The deeper you go, the more subtle the distortions become, the more refined your discernment must be. Tahuti didn't promise comfort, he promised the truth, and truth will burn through anything that's not in harmony with it, including your attachments, your ideas of control, even your spiritual ego. The moment you think you've arrived is often the moment you've stopped listening. Stay empty, stay open, stay curious. The current of the divine mind is always moving, and your job is to stay in tune. The spiritual path is a continuous journey of self-discovery, not a destination. Tahuti is not waiting for you in temples or texts. He's waiting in your awareness, in your decision to align with truth no matter the cost, in your willingness to speak clearly, to act consciously, to live as if the universe is intelligent, because it is. When you return to that intelligence, you return to yourself. And when you do, you don't just remember who you are, you remember what you're here to become, the purpose of your existence. Tehuti never left. That's the truth that dissolves the illusion of distance, of separation, of some far-off divine you need to chase. He was never locked in the past, never buried in the sand or entombed in forgotten hieroglyphs. He's not waiting in a temple or hidden in a book. He's here now, moving through consciousness like breath through the lungs, subtle, essential, and always present. The real deception wasn't that the gods disappeared. It was that you were taught to stop looking for them inside yourself. Tahuti is not mythology, he's memory, a living current of intelligence that flows through everyone bold enough to slow down and tune in. The divine is not something we seek, but rather something we remember within ourselves. The ancient scribes didn't just write about him, they wrote through him. That's why the emerald tablets still vibrate when read with presence. That's why the Kabbalion isn't just a book, it's a doorway. Because these teachings weren't designed to be understood intellectually. They were designed to be awakened in the body, in the intuition, in the parts of you that exist beyond language. This is the truth beneath all the distractions. You don't need to believe in Tahuti to feel him. You only need to become quiet enough to recognize his presence where it's always been, within your own awareness. Truth is not something we can grasp with our minds, but rather something we feel in our hearts. When you live from this place, life stops feeling random. You begin to notice patterns where you once saw coincidence. You hear messages in silence. You feel guidance in the spaces where logic used to reign. This is the shift from information to gnosis, from seeking outside to embodying what has always been inside. It's subtle but undeniable. You begin to live with the quiet clarity of someone who remembers, and that memory changes everything. You don't have to label yourself, you don't need a title, a lineage, or permission. The activation doesn't come from ceremony, it comes from sincerity, from choosing truth over comfort, from choosing presence over performance, from recognizing that your thoughts are spells, your voice is sacred, and your actions are rituals. Every moment becomes an opportunity for conscious creation. Whether you know it or not, you are already creating reality. The only question is, are you doing it with awareness or on autopilot? Tehuti invites you to reclaim authorship, not just of your beliefs, but of your being, to see your life as a manuscript that you're writing moment by moment, every thought, every word, every choice, a line of sacred text. And when you write, so if there's one thing to take away from all of this, it's that the wisdom of Tehuti, that ancient knowing, isn't some dusty relic locked away in the past. It's a living, breathing force waiting to be remembered and embodied by you. It's about reclaiming your voice, aligning with the natural rhythms of the universe, and recognizing the divine intelligence that resides within. It's about stepping into your power as a conscious creator and shaping a reality aligned with your highest potential. I'd love to hear your thoughts on all of this. Does any of this resonate with you? What are your experiences with this kind of knowledge? Leave a comment below and let's get the conversation going. I'm eager to learn from your insights or answer any questions you may have. And if you found this helpful and want to explore more of these deeper truths, be sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any future videos. There is always more to uncover.